The trial for the only person charged in the murder of Tupac Shakur is entering its second week of testimony today. Prosecutors allege Duane Keffe D Davis orchestrated the hit, and on Friday, jurors heard Davis, in his own words, admitting to being involved. In the recordings, Davis tells similar stories to investigators in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, and he was also captured on video telling the same story to a documentary filmmaker. But the defense says his confession was a lie. ABC News legal analyst Brian Buckmire is here with more on that trial. Hi, Brian. So prosecutors say Keffe D's story essentially stayed the same for years. They played these recordings of him spanning more than a decade, where he's consistent about key details of Tupac's death. How important is that to the prosecution?
Good morning, Diane. Well, it appears that the prosecution and defense are centralizing their arguments about consistency. And so the prosecution is responding from the defense's opening statement and some of their cross-examination to show that these statements that are given in 2008, 2009, and then almost a decade afterwards have consistencies which suggest to them that he's telling the truth each and every time, that subtle inconsistencies or immaterial inconsistencies, like maybe like the color of a car or the color of someone's shirt, doesn't matter, but the thrust of what he is saying, that he, Keffe D, handed a gun to his nephew, Orlando Anderson, that they orchestrated this and planned this in retribution for what happened earlier in the evening, that is consistent. That's what the prosecution is arguing here.
When questioning the documentary filmmaker, the defense pointed out that Keffe D wasn't under oath during that interview. Do you think he's foreshadowing Davis potentially taking the stand?
Diane, I would say foreshadowing, or at the very least keeping that door open to see whether or not the jury is kind of picking up the argument that he's putting down, so to speak. He's trying to show a difference between entertainment and the court of law. Giving an interview or speaking for a documentary, that's entertainment. Speaking in a proffer agreement, that's in order to save his own skin. But when he's under oath, he's telling the truth. That could be a signal to suggest that the story or the version of the story he's going to give when he has the opportunity to take the stand may be the truth, but it's still up to Keffe D as to whether or not he decides that. So it could be a foreshadowing or just kind of seeing if that avenue is open.
Davis spoke out at the start of the hearing on Friday, saying his house was broken into and vandalized. He's accusing prosecutors of giving out his address and putting his family in danger. What did you make of that moment?
I think that's real. That's authentic, right? I've represented many clients. They've spoken out, sometimes even going further and have an outburst. This is a gang-related case. And if you're talking about a gang member who you're accusing of basically snitching, whether he is former or current, that does put him and those around him in danger. And as defense attorneys, prosecutors, and even judges, we have to be mindful of that and make sure that while Keffe D is accused of doing something very bad, orchestrating a murder, his family, his children, his loved ones have nothing to do with this. And you want to ensure that they don't become victims in of themselves because of information they put out there. I think it was a real concern of his, and it's valid for him to speak out about it.
What are you watching for in week 2 of this trial?
Corroboration. At this point, we've talked a lot about the inconsistencies and consistencies of his statements. I think the defense next is going to push back on the fact that through all these investigations, and what it didn't take until about 3 decades later for the dots to be connected. Is that because he simply just didn't speak enough over the years, or because they found corroboration to show what he said in these interviews, what he said in these proffer agreements can be substantiated by actual physical evidence? If that's not there, I think the defense has a pretty strong argument come closing arguments.
Brian Buckmire, thank you. And Brian, we'll have more on this trial on Burden of Proof right here on ABC News Live every weekday at 5:30 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Eastern.